Welcome to Do It Now, a platform for you to learn from those that have already done it. Do it now.
Alex, thanks very much for coming on, and welcome to the Do It Now podcast. We'll just get cracking. I know you're a busy guy. I don't want to take up too much of your time there. So it's split into 5 sections. Introductions, first job, career path, your business, and the final note. So we'll just get cracking into it. I don't know a great deal about you, mate, so I'm learning as I go, and I'm just finding it as well. I get the feeling that maybe we couldn't cover everything that you've got up to in the space of an hour. If you can try and kind of capsulise the points of how you did it and what you learned, that would be great, mate. So introduction, who are you? What current methods have you got of bringing in capital, and what area geographically do you operate?
Okay, so first of all, obviously, thanks for having us, Adam. It's a pleasure. And yeah, I'm getting used to speaking into cameras, as you know. That doesn't mean I'm good at it. So yeah, I basically was, I would say, a very poor scholar. I have bad experiences of schools, and I have bad memories. It's a period of my life I don't cherish in any way, shape or form. I have bad experiences with teachers. I never found inspiration in anything at all to do with the education system. Nothing. I don't have one single, sadly, I don't have one single good thing to say about it or my time spent at school. Probably because with all the education we have now and all the free information, I probably had some undiagnosed characteristics, or a bit of the old mental block kind of thing, in particular with numbers and stuff like that. I've always been very, very poor with stuff like that. So that's interesting to other people that I meet in business and other entrepreneurs, because they're quite surprised by that, because they say that I appear educated, intellectual, which I don't agree that I'm neither of those. I just think that I talk in layman's terms, and I do everything in its absolute simplest basic form. I usually do things the hard way or the long way round about, but I have a particular way of getting things done that has worked for me. So I don't have a particular skill set. I didn't finish an apprenticeship. So in that sense, you could have said I was an underachiever. But I knew that my drive was one that had to be tested. So I've spoken about this a few times now, and people seem to pick up on it, and it interests them. I had to be tested in the sense that it was a mental thing for myself, because I knew I wasn't ever going to be a scholar that could go with a load of qualifications and get a high paid, a good position in a company. I wasn't going to be that person. And a couple of years into a very poorly paid, poorly put together apprenticeship in heavy goods mechanics, I realised that I was intelligent enough to know that I wasn't mechanically minded. I was never going to make a mechanic. It just wasn't me, Adam. So I had decided to join the services. It was a very quick, very abrupt decision. And it was a decision that took me probably to the start of my journey proper. And I had several good years in the services. I had chosen to join the Royal Marine Commandos, which I did just before my 19th birthday, I think. It was about 18 and a bit, thereabouts, 18 and a half, say, when the process began. And that's what I did. I left Neilston and I went to Exeter, went to Exmouth in Devon, and did my training and joined the Royal Marines. And that was the start proper of my working life. So I had quite an unconventional beginning. I didn't have any business etiquette or business acumen, and I wasn't, with any natural entrepreneurial streak that I had, I certainly wasn't aware of it then. Although I do recall always been very intrigued by business frontages, shop fronts, and sign-written vehicles and stuff that people were doing as individuals, that always intrigued me, because I'd be like, oh, I like that, and I like how they've done that. And I was always quite impressed by certain businesses, the way they were presented. And I always thought to myself, I would love to try that. I would love to do something like that. So it probably was in me. I just hadn't yet really had the opportunity to test myself in business. So when I left the services, I transitioned into the oil industry, offshore oil and gas, in one role or another. And I had a few good jobs out of that. You know, periodically every couple of years, another big startup job would appear, and we would go on it and we would do well. And, you know, I would use that money to begin buying property and buying flats and stuff for the rental market, the buy-to-let market. And that was how I got into a landlord. But yet again, with landlording, I was quite unconventional in landlording, in that I saw a niche straight away where most landlords paid high street handling agents to cover their affairs and look after their portfolio. But I thought to myself, that's a really impersonal way of doing things, because you don't know them, you don't know what they're doing, and for the fees that I saw they were charging, which at times were exuberant, I thought to myself, they're not doing anything for the landlord, they're not dealing with the tenant, they don't do the whole thing, they just do one small part of it, which is a periodic check, set up the initial lease perhaps, and then receive the funds and put them into your account. I thought, what else do they do?
They do as little as possible to operate their business.
They basically, and I'll still say it to this day, the majority of the really well-known ones do absolutely nothing. So at my peak, I was extremely busy with that, and more landlords would approach me for issues with resolution. They were looking to resolve issues they had, being in multiple properties in a block. They had non-paying factions within that building that would say, well, I'm not paying a share, and we would always find resolution just by getting everyone together and saying, look, and you would say things like, well, if we don't resolve the roof or the gutter in all of your houses are not going to be damaged, not just this one, the water's going to travel. And we'd always find a good way to resolve the issues for the landlords that we represented, and it worked, and it got me known all over the south side, and down into other areas, and people contact me for advice still to this day, because it was quite an unconventional way of doing it, because no one else was doing it. And nowadays it's the big Airbnb is the big word now. I was doing that a long time ago, just in a different guise. We were doing short-term lets and stuff, and increasing the revenues for those properties. We probably weren't aware what we were doing, but nowadays they call it something. Like, everything's got a label now, Airbnb. Realistically, back then, if you had small gaps in a property was sitting and you could raise some quick revenue from it, that is what you were doing. You were Airbnb-ing it, because you were flipping them over so quickly. The property game I was in for a long time and enjoyed it, but towards the end, the past couple of years, through one thing and another, it did get sour, and I did lose the passion, and I lost the love for it. I had dealt with so many people and so many incidences of non-paying tenants and destroyed properties and other things like that it scunners you so much that I just thought to myself, I'll take a step back from this now. It's been a long time, and I'll move away from it. And that's ultimately what I've done. I scaled everything right down, and I kind of made my exit from that industry.
So Alex, you invested in property through working in the oil industry, invested in property and moved into earning a revenue through being a landlord, and you're still currently doing that. You're moving out of that, but you identified a kind of that you could maybe provide a better service than what the current kind of the bigger companies were doing at the moment.
Yeah, so So what I did with that, I'll go into that a wee bit. So I made it more efficient. So I would get, tenants would approach me, I would be tagged through the Donna social media, and the word spreads really quickly through circles, friendships and stuff. And folk would say, see Alex Carnie, he'll get you a flat, because I had access to a lot of property. So I would have a waiting list at all times, and I was quick at getting on to people and getting back to people. And I would do the whole thing, which still to this day in Glasgow, I don't believe any agency offers. So I would do the whole thing. So I would meet the tenant, we would have our conversation, we would go immediately to the DSS or whatever, we would do the paperwork, we would get it in straight away so I knew everything was in. We would do the sums, set up the accounts, get in the property. At the time it was that efficient, I even had vans to get the people moved. Some people had to move quick, we moved them quick, we got them straight in the door. I knew the paperwork was in place, and ultimately it sounds mad because folk would go, what, you moved people in? And you say, yeah, we helped them entirely. So because a lot of people had the trepidation and the fear of a move, maybe with kids or something, they were wary, and things like that can drag on for weeks. So we made it happen rapidly in a day or two, and we got them in, settled, sorted, and people were like, wow, that was easy. So folk would say to other potential tenants, oh no, he helped us move, he got the van, he did this, these guys ran our stuff up, and we were in a day. And it was, so we started to do that, and inadvertently I probably created a monster, because then I became a removal service as well. And people are going, oh, that's brilliant, you've totally sorted it out for us. So yeah, at no extra cost, by the way. However, what I saw was that by offering that, it helped to fill the portfolio, to guarantee the tenants for the landlords and to guarantee the revenues. I was also one of the very few landlords in the whole of Scotland that wasn't taking deposits and silly amounts of money up front. We would take a month in advance, which is basically a month's rent. There's your keys, pay us again in 4 weeks. And we weren't pressuring people to find 2 months, 2 months rent, a deposit. There's still places in Glasgow I see advertising they're taking 3 months rent up front. And I knew back then who I was dealing with, and that most of my clientele were DSS clientele, and they don't have £1,500 lying about. So it worked. Yeah, I had my blips, I had my ups and downs with it. I was let down by people close to me, friends, or still to this day I could put a figure on your plate that you would be shocked at, that people owe me in back rents and stuff from a long time ago, and they were supposed to be friends. And that's money that you never ever see again, Adam. So you have to balance the books. You have to find ways and ingenious ways of filling these properties quickly and getting the maximum out of them every single month of the year. Because if you've got a portfolio of 5 and 2 are empty for 6 months, you haven't made any money for 12 months. That's how tight it is. You have to get it right all of the time. And that's almost impossible. There were periods where we had really good runs, but there were periods where it was, usually friends and people that I had time for that were the ones actually stinging us. And that's just life. People's situations change, and I don't hold any personal grudges. It's business at the end of the day, and if I passed them in the street, it wouldn't be mentioned and it wouldn't be an issue. It just is what it is. It's part of it, and especially when you're dealing with, people from our kind of backgrounds and our kind of levels that are relying on DSS payments and maybe the promise of a poorly paid job, and they're trying to balance things and they get caught up and things do happen. And that's just life. You just got to take it in the chin and get on with it. That's why you have to cover your bases a lot of the times, because you're sometimes balancing the sheet. And, I always had other incomes and working offshore from other stuff. And I made light of a lot of it because I knew early on that I would accept it. Some people, some landlords are completely and utterly shocked that they're like, what do you mean they're not paying their rent for the last 2 months? And they're absolutely horrified by it because they're not exposed to it. So I think what landlords liked was that I was the buffer zone. I interfaced with the problems, with the domestic violence, with with all sorts of stuff like that. I've been in horrific situations as a landlord. I've seen horrific things as a landlord. I've seen addicts overdosing with kids, sitting in the living room floor while the parents are out of it on the couch. And I've walked into houses that have been left open, and there's a kid in the house alone and stuff like that, and the mum's next door with the neighbour, and you're going, oh, and it's just you see so many things that you become completely normalised with it very quickly. And landlording changes all the time. If I had my time again, would I do it the same way? I probably wouldn't. I would probably go into commercial landlording.
Do you still earn capital from being a landlord at the moment? Have you get anything other ways of raising money?
Yeah, I'm still involved. I'm still involved in one way or another in property, more so in a consultancy role, as an advisory role to people coming into it, younger guys that are doing my journey all over again, 15 years after me. Okay. Young guys that are offshore and stuff, they're looking to transition and have that second income and build that little empire. So I'm able to educate them to the pitfalls, and I'm able to give them good advice on certain mortgage strategies and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that I would never class myself in any field as expert, because it changes so quickly. Excuse me. It changes so quickly, and there's the dawn of the internet guru now with property. Every guy's hosting a seminar. He's going to make you a millionaire in 6 months with no money. They all promise the same thing, right? That's not going to happen, because there are so many intelligent people out there that are way smarter than me, and they can't do it. And I understand that a tiny, tiny percentage sometimes do pull it off, but I would really like to see the spreadsheets, because I'm quite sceptical about a lot of the online claims that I see. It's not easy.
Kind of dream being involved in property, owning your own properties, landlord. That's a dream of many folk, but it sounds for your account over there that it's a hard game to be involved in. It's a lot harder than the dream that's maybe sold about it. There. Do you have anything else going on now? What are you moving into?
I've had the fisheries for 15 years there that I built up. They were a labour of love, I took them on from being bankrupt, and I transformed them into a really good going concern. I trained up people to come in and run them on my behalf as managers. And over the years, we had a few people up there, and you have to keep rebranding them and keep changing them and shaking them up. And they're difficult assets to manage, because it is such a small market. The day ticket market is small, and everyone always wants to undercut you and pay for nothing, and they don't see them as sporting assets. They don't think twice about paying 50 or 60 or £100 out for a day at the football to watch their favourite team, but they would grudge you £15 or £20 for a full day's fishing on a sporting estate that's probably carrying £30,000 worth of stockfish or £50,000 worth of stockfish, and they don't realise that you as the fishery manager are working 140 hours a week, or practically living on site, and and getting 3 hours a night in your bed. And a lot of people don't get how they work. And I went into that. I came offshore and realised that I was made aware that the lease was for sale, and I pounced on it. And I started running it immediately with no experience at all in that industry. And I went in completely blindfolded and just started to run it and put my own way on it. And it very quickly gained a very big following. And people said that they were like, I know that, people close to me say that I polarise people, and it's the Marmite thing. love him or hate him, but he does what he says in the tin, and you know that's what it is. He's got his own way of doing stuff, and I get that. And I'm quite a unusual kind of character in the way that I do things, and people are kind of sometimes left scratching their heads with me because they don't know what it means or they don't know how I've meant something. And I get that, and I'm able now in my 40s to laugh at it because I probably was never aware I was that kind of person. And you know, I recently passed over to Ross at Landlord, the fishery manager up there, after 15 years. And he's the right guy for the job to take it forward. He's doing good things, and I thought he deserved his chance at it. So no one ever thought I would do that, but I did. And you know, the timing was right. So he'll have his shot. Mike Carnie at the Sun wrote a lovely thing about me about the first time we met. He called me the sheriff. Yeah, because I appeared in front of him, and he was like quite shocked by my appearance. And because I thought they were sneaking away without paying. And in that kind of industry, Adam, everybody pays because it's a tough gig. And that 15 quid that I thought he was leaving with might have been my dinner for that next couple of nights.
Did both of them serve you well? Both of the professionals serve you well, kind of mentally and financially? Gain for both of them and grow for both of them?
They were difficult, mate, right? But they did do well, and they did, for what they are, for the very short season that they have due to their geographic location. They're high up, they're very exposed to the elements. You've got a really short window of opportunity to make your money, get your bills paid, pay your lease, and get your stock fish paid. And hopefully there's something there at the end for you. And yeah, it was difficult, but I was doing them, I had other things going on. So yeah, there's no regrets. They are difficult assets to manage. That's all I'll say about fisheries. You will continually invest in them for the rest of your life if you choose to take one on.
Quite big scale projects, Alex. Have you any other plates spinning? I know you keep yourself a busy guy and you've lots of stuff going on. Anything you'd like to mention at all there?
Yeah, I just spent quite a while being involved with a kind of start-up thing to do with the care industry, and I say quite a while, it's been on and off for a couple of years now, and basically through this lockdown and COVID and stuff, I made a decision for the first time in my life to walk away from something, and I walked away from it because it was such a big part of my mindset every single day. I was constantly desperate for it to take off. I was really, really tuned into it. I thought it was something that was going to be, it would have been life-changing, and it will go ahead, and but it won't go ahead with me because I walked away from it, which was a massive decision, and not many people know about it, and not many people know what it meant to me, but it meant a great deal to me. It was a complete transition for me. It was something in my life that I've never been involved in. It's completely different. It was the care home industry, and I've had to walk away from it because it was just stopping and starting constantly with everything that was going on. And when there's multiple investors and there's bankers and hedge funders and all the involved at the start of the process, it's long and it's very difficult because you're trying to get so many, astute, greedy people singing off the same sheet, and everyone wants a huge piece of the pie. And although the idea was fantastic and the people involved were fantastic, and I was invited into that for whatever they believed I brought to the table, I was brought into the fold. And ultimately, after quite a period of time, I decided to walk away from it for the first time ever. I did it for two reasons. One of them was it was clouding up my head a lot of the time, and I was so focused on it that other things were suffering. And I just decided this is taking too long. I'm not enjoying this process. I'm at a good place just now. I've got a lot going on, but I'm enjoying everything that I'm doing. And I decided to step back. I've never done that before, Adam. And I probably stepped back from something that could have changed my life, both financially and for security reasons, long term. But sometimes you just have to make a decision. That's not something I've ever done. I've never stepped away from anything. I've stepped away from it before I was neck deep in it. And then at that point, if we had been functioning, I would have felt I was letting people down. At this moment in time, I've let no one down. And that was the right time to step away. So yeah, that was a kind of...
Taking too much time, mind space, and just a wee bit too much of your life than what you could have gave it at that minute, maybe. Was that right in saying, am I right in saying that you are creating a pond? Am I right in saying that, Alex? I think I've seen, is that something part of the thing you gave up?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Just to kind of clarify there what you said about taking too much on. I've been guilty, Adam, for 20 years of taking too much on. I take on so much because that's how I perform. So I've never had one thing in my life, a 9-to-5 job, go home and that's it. I've had 5 things in my life at all times. I perform better under quite extreme pressure. I seem to function better, and the less time I've got to think about personal stuff, I seem to operate better. So I didn't step away from it because it was too much. I stepped away from it because it wasn't happening quick enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't happening. It was stalling, and I need action. I need to be in the thick of it. I need to be in about it. So I stepped away from it. So that's kind of that finished. So you're talking now about Heathery Moor. Yeah, Heathery Moor's going to be a whole new thing to do with the fisheries. It's going to be multiple ponds, multiple lakes, a lot smaller than Harelaw, but the actual project site is way bigger. It's a couple of 100 acres, and it is an incredible site. It's very isolated, but by its location and its contours, it's got so much shelter. So it kind of came to me when I was in hospital with sepsis last year. I had been thinking about a project, and I've always had this thing in my head about log cabins and day tickets and renting individual private lakes out for a week. There's nothing in Scotland to match it. And there is no site available in Scotland, really, in my opinion, that's suitable for it. So I identified this site literally on my doorstep. And while I was in hospital, quite ill, I had that eureka moment where I said, I need out of here. I need to get up there and look at that properly. I've passed it 1,000,000 times. I've walked it 1,000,000 times. I've just never thought about it in a business sense. And something came in my head and something kind of triggered me. And I decided that could work. So I went up and I took a look, and I was right. It was exactly as I had imagined in the hospital. And I hadn't been on that bit of ground for years. And it just came to me really quickly. So I approached the landowner and we hit it off straight away. He loved the idea, great to deal with, good relationship, long term, moving forward. And he was all for it. And it's going ahead. So I had made the start last year and made a good start myself, hired machinery, drove the tracked machinery myself, just learnt very quickly how to do it. Nowhere near an expert, but I got the job done. I've already built a couple of ponds, and they're now at the settling stage. We've mapped out all the other areas for the other ponds. So the whole site is going to be developed, and that's something that I've decided that I will probably look to involve a partner with, because it's got fantastic potential. And when you add in rentable cabins, and the isolation of having your own lake with, I had the land all surveyed by a professional, a top-rated, fishery consultant from England, a guy called Andrew Ellis from A Fisheries. He's a fantastic world of knowledge, and he came up and consulted on the site, and he did a whole survey, and he sends you a report and breaks it all down, and that report is lent towards investors who would look at that and say, well, this guy's, very, very quantified to make that assumption and come to those conclusions. So that was what you would lend to investors and say, well, here's a non-biased report on the potential development, and this is how I will get your returns. So that's an amazing site. I'm probably only kicking myself because I didn't go over there 10 years ago and have a look, and it's always been sitting there totally untouched, and it's got phenomenal potential. So it is definitely happening.
It sounds really exciting. I've seen the pictures on Facebook, you creating the ponds, and kind of got a general idea of what you were up to there. It looks cool, and I wish you the best with that. I hope that takes off well. Hopefully we get out the back of this pandemic lockdown really soon, and we can get developing and get moving forward with things, and or maybe you can even get developing then, and then it'll be ready for the world opening back up. Wish you the best with that. If I could just, last wee point in the first section that we're talking about there, if I could ask you, Alex, maybe a bit of a hard one off the cuff just to think of, but the three subjects we're talking there, if you could try and summarise for us within being a landlord and the water ownership, owning the locks, and also creating this lock. Oh, sorry, it was the nursing homes, wasn't it? It was care homes. What would you say you learned in each one of them? Is there something you could say at a specific time?
Yeah, I do. I've always had multiple things going on, Adam. I've always been involved in multiple projects at any one time in my life. I've never been a 9-to-5 guy. It doesn't suit me. It's not for me. I knew that a long time ago. I've got an entrepreneurial streak. I've got my involvement in the coffee shops. You know, I've developed them from beginning to end, and got them running successfully. I've leased them out. I've sublet them, stuff like that. And I'm halfway through another one just now, which is a very personal one for myself. It's a lot to do with my history in my life. It's branded in the favour of the underdog. It kind of favours the underdog. And it's got a great story, and it's got a great journey, and it's a kind of concept coffee shop, and it will all be received well. I'm sure it will, and we're hopefully going to be getting that opening soon. I couldn't have picked a worse year to get involved in a brand new project because of COVID and because of all the restrictions and being locked down for months. I've lost so much time, and in all of that time, I pay the rent on these units, and I take the hit, and it's always a big hit. And the help for small businesses hasn't been there, no matter what anyone claims. I could put 500 people on your podcast to back me up in that. The help's not there for the small businesses. We do feel that we're being targeted and crushed. That's a whole different tangent. But for an entrepreneur these days, for the real ones, they will survive anything. They'll find a way to adapt. They'll adapt their hours, their environment, their branding, their produce, their delivery. They'll adapt everything, and they'll adapt the way that they work. They'll do it overnight because they're real entrepreneurs. And there's nothing more inspiring to me than meeting other entrepreneurs that have done so well. And there's so many people out there in Glasgow that are doing amazing things. There's a girl with a great story who owns a cafe in Shawlands. It's one of Glasgow's most famous landmarks now. That's Laurie McMillan at Cafe Strange Brew. Started with nothing, threw all her coins in the pot, took on a tiny little unit and started doing her thing. She was a chef, and it became iconic. She eventually, very quickly, was able to move across the road to a bigger unit, and the rest's history. She's a great story. I could put you in contact with Laurie. An amazing story. And against all the odds, she succeeded. And little did she know that the cafe game 4 or 5 years ago was going to explode. Coffee has exploded. It's one of the biggest growth markets in the UK and Europe. It's actually one of the biggest growth markets worldwide. In Scotland, 10 years ago, where would you have got a decent coffee? Nowhere is the answer. Now, just here in the West End of Glasgow, there's 50 amazing coffee shops, and they're all doing really well. They don't appear to be diluted yet. There's still growth in the industry. So that's currently, for the past several years, that's been my real passion. the boutique style coffee shops, the sit-in takeaway coffee shops with the high-end produce. That's my current real passion. And I do seem to transition every few years. I've got another interest. That's definitely my sole main interest just now, is high volume, high quality coffee shops.
Aye, another thing you've got behind you, you're into coffee shops. We forgot to mention that in the first instance, but that's another thing outside of the landlord, and we're into the care sector and the water care there also. So you're obviously a guy who, when you think of things or you think ideas, you make it happen. You're not thinking about stuff for years or months. You're doing things instantaneously when these things are making it move and contacting the people you need to speak to. Also, just while I'm speaking just now, because I know we've got a wee bit of lag, anybody you could put us in touch with, it sounds like an interesting story. I'd certainly be talking to her, seeing how it goes, and that'd be good, mate. That'd be appreciated, and obviously a wee bit of advertisement if I can help with that. It'd be where you could give in return, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if I was going to give advice to anybody that was be younger, I would just say to them, if I was approached the other night by two young ladies who have started up a clothing line, and I was able to give them a lot of advice on the pitfalls and stuff about what not to do. I says, you guys don't need to make all the mistakes because I've made them, so I'm free with that information. And they were really genuine in the way that they approached me for help. So we met up, and brilliant. They're really getting there. They've got a great concept, and they've started something from scratch, and it's really admirable because there's so much talent out there in Glasgow. There's so much talent in Scotland. Sometimes young people, I don't believe they get enough guidance. Leaving school with a certain amount of qualifications these days, in my opinion, is not going to get you far. Half of the people that work in McDonald's or work in the hospitality industry or serving pubs are not getting paid anywhere near for what they're qualified. They've got degrees, they've got this, and they can't find the work. There's no work. There's no industry. We're not doing anything. We're sitting stagnant. We're stuck in the mud. So you've got all of these little high street and main street units where entrepreneurs are in doing their things, clothing lines, boutique coffee shops, tea, all sorts of stuff, design wear, photography, sign writing. There's just so much variation in the small business world now, and they're all amazing people. They all deserve their kudos, and that's what I love. I still love it, Adam. I still get a real buzz from getting a start-up project off the ground with basically a shoestring budget and no qualifications. Knowing nothing about the game you're getting into is dark water. It's dark water to wade into. That's
one of the hopes and aspirations for this podcast, is to share the stories and the accounts of how these people done it, or how these people made it happen. Share these accounts and try and hopefully change the narrative a wee bit about which deemed as successful, which deemed as cool, because these people put a lot of work and effort, and hopefully the end result, I think we can all agree, is maybe some people are different, but the end result's a more comfortable life, self-autonomy, working for yourself, where you've no got a boss overarching you, telling you where to go, when to go for your lunch breaks, or these other things. I think that's a massive thing if somebody can gain that sort of thing. Sharing the knowledge, so that's what I'm hopeful to try and share the knowledge of how it's done. All these different business owners, people you're talking about, they've all done it themselves. They might have legged up and hands up at some points for people, but they had to go there, they had to think about it, they had to put themselves through it. So I'm hopeful to share as many stories as I possibly can, go to as many people as we possibly can, and share the stories of guys like yourself, especially you. I think you're a kind of a special example. You're quite driven, Alex, more than most people. You've got lots of places in, so it's good to have you on and hear your account of things. Can I ask you, where did you first work? What was your first job, mate?
I left school on the Friday. I was the first person in my year, I believe, to leave school. I'm quite sure I was. And my very first job, I walked across the road when I got home that day and asked a carpet fitter for a job. And this was a guy who was an entrepreneur who had found a niche in the market for an American carpet cleaning system, and I still remember to this day it was called the Bain Clean System. Huge American machine. I still remember exactly how to start it and how to run it and how to clean the filters. I remember because I learnt quickly. And I asked him for a job, and he says, yeah, you can start tomorrow and you'll get 50 quid a week. I went, done. So that was me able to then go home to my mum and say, I've left school, but I've got a job. Because I wouldn't have been allowed to lie in my bed and have a lie in and all the rest of it. I'm not from a family like that. I'm from a working family. So I had the job, and that was the beginning of my working life. Very hard work. It was during a period in the mid-90s where there'd been a lot of flooding on the Tory Glen high flats where their flat roofs had caved in, and every single flat had to have the carpets done. So it was running machines and hoses up and down high flat stairs during the height of the heroin epidemic and stuff like that in Glasgow, in a very rough, run-down area. And it was intimidating, but it was a learning curve. And I was a very hard worker. I've always been a very hard worker. And
some hairy carpets there, Alex. Some some hairy ones, patches and holes and
learning curve. And people, so they were saying to us, can you not just give us the money and we'll sort out the carpet? There was, they wouldn't have bought the carpets. It was brilliant. It was great. Met great people. It was a long time ago, but it was a learning curve. And I always was looking for stuff. I was getting picked up on Saturday mornings by guys from where I lived in vans, flung in the back of a transit, taken to a job to labour, to monoblockers, and right at the boom time of the monoblock driveways when it was just becoming a thing. And that kind of work was abundant, and the money, there was great money in that. And they realised how hard I worked. I never stopped for a breath. So I was always going to get taken onto jobs. And I just carried that on in life. And I work hard still to this day. When I put a shift in, it as a real shift. I've never been somebody that kind of just goes through the gears. I like to graft, and I like to know I've earned it.
You learned anything for the places? I know it's a long time ago, but is there anything specific for the couple of roles where you say, I took this as a young guy?
Absolutely.
Even if it's negative?
Yeah, absolutely. Be your own person straight away from the off. Always have your own way of doing things, and be confident. The absolute single most important thing in any walk of life in business or a startup company or being your self-employed is confidence. Have the confidence in what you're doing and absolutely believe in yourself. Self-belief, it's so important. Believe in it and see it through. Do not deviate for your journey. If you truly believe in something, don't let naysayers or hearsay or anyone who's against it or tries to derail your journey, don't let them in the door. Stop them in their tracks and say, I don't want to hear negativity. I don't want to know. If you truly believe that you're right in what you're doing, see it through and give it 100%. Because if you walk away and one day it comes back to you and you say, I really could have put that over the line, I could have done more, I never done enough, that's going to haunt you. If you're anything like me, that's going to haunt you. And I see everything through. There were times in my life I should have walked away from certain things. Some things to do with the fisheries. They were extremely massive amounts of work for small returns at certain times. And someone perhaps lesser driven would have walked away, or someone receiving guidance from a mentor or an accountant or someone saying the sums are not working here, you're being a busy fool. So I know at times in my life how much I put in for small reward, but I still wouldn't change the fact I've done it because it lets me know who I am. And I think entrepreneurs, these young people that are taking the leap from a job that's an industry that's collapsed or they've been paid off and they're going to start up something now, be it a roll shop, be it a salon, be it a grooming barbers, they all fall under the same band where the things that are going to make you success is drive, getting up with the same attitude every morning and having self-belief and abundance. You must believe in yourself. If you're going to allow people to pollute your mind and blacken you and put you down and discourage you, you've got the wrong people around about you. It's so important to have the right people around about you. And for a long period of my life, I never. So only my drive and my self-belief got me to where I am. Because I had a lot of negativity at times in my life. It's unhelpful. It's baggage that you don't need. So if I could say anything to any young person starting out, if it's remotely negative, get rid of it. If you're in a partnership with someone and they're pulling you in another direction and you're uncomfortable, step out of the partnership and go your own way. Because that's weight on your shoulders that you do not need. There's enough pressure. There's enough pressure just to get the weeks in and just to get a step ahead of yourself. You just don't need it. There's so much negativity in the world today, and there's so much online abuse and online trolling and horrible elements of life that young folk are really up against it. So I've got respect for anybody that's got to go out and try something. I'm not done yet, Adam. I've got so many more things that I will be doing in the future. I'm never done. I'm always thinking about the next thing. And the landscape changes by the day, so you have to keep up. First up, best dressed.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. Totally agree. Am I right in saying, Alex, earlier on, you'd said that obviously you were in the Royal Marines and then you moved into the oil industry for there. Now, these two topics, no doubt, we could talk about them for hours. There's probably hours and hours of conversation to be had there, but just to try and get to the bones of, obviously, you had a couple of careers when you were really young. You've built a bit of confidence for there. You've obviously learned that you're talking what you were talking about there, to be your own man, built a bit of confidence. You've then went to the Royal Marines, get through the process there, which must have been a big, massive thing, and then you've moved into oil from there. From the Royal Marines and the oil industry, again, it's hard to kind of encapsulate it, but if I could ask you to try and say, what did you learn for both of the places? Also, how did you get? First of all, how did you obtain both the positions? If we could go to the Marines first and then the oil industry second, please.
So the Royal Marines was a very, very rapid decision. So I had discovered that I didn't enjoy the working environment, working in mechanics. I didn't enjoy it one bit. For a start, I'm not mechanically minded, so naturally you don't understand really the job that you're trying to learn. And trying to learn something that you're struggling with is not enjoyable. So I was always testing myself. I had always been very fit, running and stuff like that, done a lot of that. So I wanted to test myself. So I had discovered the Foreign Legion, the French Foreign Legion, and I'd been thinking about it, and for one reason or another, it never happened. So I found myself in Glasgow this day, still with this on my mind that I wanted away. And I found the careers office. And you've got next door, you've got the parachute regiment, you've got the Marines. Parachute regiment were shut for their lunch. So I went into the Royal Marines, and that was how my choice was made. Slightly funnier than that, because the guy in the paras was eating a sandwich and told me to beat it and come back at 2 o'clock. I never went back. I went into the Royal Marines office and I said I want to join up, and basically that was it. I did, and not long after that I was away into basic training. It really happened as quickly and as easy as that. I don't think it is just as easy nowadays. And then obviously once you're in, you have to then complete training, and that's not easy. But I did, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And to certain types of young guy, I would recommend it, absolutely. But it's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone. It's very, very physically demanding, and it's very, very mentally demanding. But it taught me a lot about myself. It let me know how far I can go. It let me know what I can overcome. It taught me how to endure pain, punishment, mental torture, starvation. It taught me how to handle fear, the unknown, trepidation, all of those emotions. It teaches you an awful lot about yourself. It lets you know exactly who you are. So that confirmed a lot of things for me, and it also showed me other things that I could do that I wasn't aware of, about the limits that you're prepared to go to get something, which is that green berry. You know, it means that much to you. You see guys on camp, corporals, walking around wearing it, and to you they are God. They are godlike entities because they have that thing that you cherish so much. And then you get it, and then after you get it, it's not that big a deal. So it's kind of like, oh, I've got it now. What happens next? No, you just go and join a unit now and that's you. So it's almost an anticlimax, but no regrets. I met guys that I'm still in touch with till today, and amazing people, lost a lot of good people. Teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you that you would love your kids, things that you love to teach your kids, about endurance, about how far you're prepared to go in order to succeed. So when I left the services, I was offered an interview in the oil industry because my best mate was in it. So I threw my clothes in the back of a van. I had a little escort van, and I threw a bag in the back of that, and I hadn't long bought a flat, and I had no money left. So I had about 40 quid to my name when I drove to Newcastle and got the interview and got the job, only because I said, the guy asked me, will you travel? We're going to be towing this vessel to Nigeria. It's going to take 13 weeks. Would you do that? And I says, yeah, no problem. It was nothing to me. And because I said yes to that, I got the job. So I went on there, and that was the beginning. Straight away, I was into making 3 times as much as I'd ever made in the services, and I was down to my last 40 quid. So if I didn't get the job, I would probably had to walk back to Glasgow. So that was my transition.
Brilliant.
Right, and at that time, you know, you got jobs on word of mouth. This is a good guy, he'll do a good job. So I got it, and it started me in the game, and it just grew from there.
I think from listening to you, Alex, everything you're about to epitome of the Do It Now podcast and the idea, you go for things and go for do it. For example, you've drove down to Newcastle with next to nothing, taking a big massive risk going there. Then you've been confronted with 13 weeks in a ship in order to obtain a good career where you're going to earn good money, which then led to you being a landlord and stuff like that. So you've got that do it now attitude that I think a lot of folk could learn from, and hopefully there'll be some gold nuggets information in this podcast that some folk can hear from and get a bit of inspiration from it. And I think that you've definitely got that kind of inspiring thing about you, mate. You keep on going, and you work hard. Not everybody does that, Alex.
Well, I tell you something that I very rarely tell anybody. It's this will be really frowned upon. So I rented a unit from a well-known, an old gentleman, a very well-known Glasgow landlord, a very successful Glasgow entrepreneur, business owner, landlord. And he couldn't really find out much about me, and he was quite sceptical. And I had to convince him that I was the right guy to take this on. So for the first time in my life, I had to get someone that was as equally as respected as him to give me a shout out. So because this other guy knew me, they spoke, and he went, no, he said he's got unusual ways of doing things, but he gets the job done. So I got the agreement, got the lease in place and stuff, and this entrepreneur, I won't name him, he said to me, after we met a few times, he said, you're the most unconventional businessman I've ever met. He went, you've got the strangest ways of doing things. And I went, yeah, that's right. And he went, okay, fine, as long as it works for you. And he asked me a question, and he was absolutely shocked at the answer. He asked me about my business plan. I says, I've never done a business plan. And he went, sorry, excuse me. And I said, I've never done a business plan. And that's the truth. I've never, ever done a business plan. Ever.
I think I think I know what's going on there, Alex. I think it's that your attitude. You're getting up every morning early and you're working till 8 o'clock at night, and you're doing that every day. So it's inevitable things in your life, and your career's going to move forward, and you're always going to be doing that. Whereas other people quite know with that ambition and drive, maybe need that career plan in front of them so that they've got a target team. Whereas you're probably going to surpass your target most of the time. Through 14-hour days, mate. You know, and grafting hard.
The way I saw it, if I need to sit down for 2 or 3 days doing a business plan, I could have that place ripped out in 2 or 3 days.
That's it. That's exactly what I was thinking. So the oil industry, what do you feel you learned from that? Anything from the oil industry? Obviously, it was massive. The Royal Marines. There's the amount of knowledge and growth that was involved there. It's hard to put into words with the sound of it. The oil industry, any big things you could say you took for that, you learned from that? You said you got a job through a friend and then you took that drive down and you went for it, but any big learning points, growing points?
Got a shout for an interview, but you still have to do the job, so it was a quick learning curve. Luckily we were really hard workers and we just bounced off each other and learnt as we went. And we got the job done, and we were well respected. We were well considered in the industry. I'm still in touch with guys from that very first job, guys that are all retired now, and we had good names, we had good reputations because we were grafters. We were out in the field, 50-degree heat, 60-degree heat, and we were out doing the graft, and we were always honest. So we got the work done. However way we had to get there, we did it. We made the sacrifices. I lived out a bag for 20 years, airports, flights, sleeping on floors, the unknown, getting to places like driving through Lagos, getting to hotels at midnight and trying to check in and no rooms. You're in dangerous countries and you just learn to do it, and it's not for everybody. And I always said, I'll go anywhere at the drop of a hat. I'll go anywhere if the money's right at the drop of a hat, because that was who we were. So we did. We went anywhere. We took on any job and we would just basically do whatever had to be done. And I think that's what stood us in good stead with those that were putting our names up. When they put our names up for a project in Iraq or somewhere else, they would say, well, these guys will get the job done. Take them with a pinch of salt, but believe me, they'll get the job done. So we did. We were workers. We were hard workers. And we just used a little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of our own savvy, and we always found a way. We'd be bounced off each other. My mate's given 25 years to that industry, and he's a hard worker. You know him. I'm talking about Chris. You know him. Really, really hard worker, and we just learnt as we went, and we got places, and we got good positions, and we got real well paid positions on massive projects, and it's brilliant. It's great life experience. What I will say is, if it's something that you want to get into, be prepared to go anywhere at the drop of a hat. And although the industry's changed now and it's not so lucrative and it's not so rewarding, you have to be prepared to be a number. You're expendable, completely and utterly expendable. You're a contractor. You can be dropped like that at the drop of a hat. So it's not rosy. If you want security, it's absolutely not the industry for you. If you want risk equals reward, go for it. But there's no security in that industry.
So I was going to say, do you think that the reward of the oil industry is worth it, and the travel, the travel and as well as the financial reward? Do you think it's worth it?
I think for me, with no qualifications at all, other than what I teach myself, I think for me it was worth it. It may not be worth it for the next man. It's not a career path I would probably advise to anyone, because I know who I am. I'm not in a position to advise anyone in what they do. I would only say that it worked for me. It was a means to an end. It got me where I needed to be quicker. It got me certain things quicker because of the financial return. And if I was doing a normal, monotonous 9-to-5 mainstream job, I would never have been able to afford the things I've had in my life, because it would have taken me 10 years to earn what I earned in 2. Do you understand? So it's like...
Sacrifice. You've had to sacrifice a fair bit, and understand that you're going to have to sacrifice time with your family, whatever else, in order to provide a better life for you and them going forward at times. But I'm guessing, is that what it sounds like?
You miss everything, Ad. You miss the first time your kid walks. You miss the first day at nursery, the first day at school. You miss the birthdays. You miss the Christmases. You miss everything. It's a huge sacrifice, and that's time that you'll never ever get back. So, and that can damage you years later. You have the guilt. I get the guilt now. Didn't have it in my 30s. I get it now. It's now that I get it. I understand that I've done it for the right reasons. I've done it for them, and one day they'll hopefully understand why I've done it. But you miss everything. You know, I think in my oldest son's first 10 birthdays, I think I was there for 3 of them.
The hard balance, Alex, between wanting to be ambitious, provide for your kids as well. So you want to provide something good for them as well, and missing all that time, because all that stuff's invaluable, all that stuff you were talking about there. But at the same time, providing for your kids and leaving a good life for them is invaluable as well. It's a hard balance. I'm sure that they will all see the rewards and they will eventually understand that missing their times, and I'm pretty sure they'll reap the benefits of your hard work, all this stuff. And I think that it's a hard balance, but the sounds of it there, between missing that time and being ambitious and stuff, and wanting to...
If you want the nice house and you want the nice life, and you don't have the qualifications to get you into a high-paid 40-hour-a-week salary, you have to go and do things like that, and that's basically who we are. It's, you know, I don't apologise for who I am. I know who I am, and the fact that I was never qualified in anything, I think I've done well enough, considering that I just used a bit of that and I just found a way. I always find a way. That's important. A real entrepreneur will always find a way, no matter what's put in front of them. And I have a quality. That's a quality that I know that I have.
A drive, determination. So the next question, Alex, there's a million different angles or specific roles you've been involved in that I could attribute this question to or direct this question to, but I'll just go for one of them so that there's not too many. Your current one, which you're doing, the coffee shops which are open, could I ask you what was your first initial steps, thought process and movement into that coffee shop? Initial steps, how you went and done it, how you actually, the bones of how you done it.
Yep, so what I did was I got an empty book, a little book, and I went round hundreds of coffee shops all over Glasgow, and I just took notes of the ones I liked, and I recorded what I liked about them. I recorded the things that they were doing, who ran them, how they had been inspired to start them up, because I asked questions of people. Everywhere I go, I ask somebody how they done something. And I learnt from that. So I wrote down the good bits, and I wrote down the ones I would go back to. And out of about 300 places that I went to, I decided that I would only go back to about 13 or 14 of them, because they made the cut. I thought they were the ones that were exceptional. I thought they were the ones that people had made the most effort with. And the rest I found to be average, okay, or just mediocre. And there's a lot of that. So, in no disrespect to anyone, but I was looking for things that were really different. So I then saw a unit available, and I wanted it badly because I knew it would work. And I bought it, and I negotiated on it, and I got it for what I wanted to pay instead of what they wanted me to pay. And I ripped it back to the bare brick, and I started from scratch. And I funded that from being offshore, and I was able to do it to a really high standard. And then I knew I'd done it right. I knew it would last for a long time. I knew the workmanship was proper. It was a good, solid investment, and it's never had a bad week, and it's never had a bad month, and it's done really, really well in the 3 years that it's been a going concern. And I just decided that it would be a great investment, you know, and it would be safe. The reason I did it was because I wanted to do it all and test myself to say, right, once I know that I can complete this project, I can go and do this on a larger scale anywhere. So, yeah, it was a good project. I really enjoyed doing it. Like anything, they have their bumps along the way. But an interesting point being, from the day I got the keys and while the renovations were ongoing, I kept a diary. I kept a diary of the first 100 people that made a comment on it, i.e. popping their head under the shutter or stopping me and asking me what I was doing. And of those 100 people, a lot of them that I know personally, 100 of them gave me negative responses. That's interesting. So what I mean by that is they said, what are you doing there? And I said, well, I'm going to open a sit-in coffee shop, you know, bistro type place. And most of the responses were, oh, you're mad, you're crazy, that will never work up here. And a lot of them are saying things like, there's a chippy there, or there's this next door, or, so it will never work. 100 out of 100 people were negative. That's the truth. And I never forget that, Adam, because it's never had a bad week. It's well run, it's well presented, its produce is good, and it's never had a bad week. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction because I know that I was right. I know that my idea was right. I know that my location was right. I know that my choice was right. And I know that my investment was right. Against all of the odds and all of the negativity that I received, it succeeded. And that's a very big thing. That's the reward. That's the juice for me. The fact that it works. Because you could take some of those people and say, well, they're just negative anyway, or they would probably like to see you fail. For some reason in society, we have a huge portion of people that want to see people fail. I'm not one of them. I clap the competition. I applaud the triers. I salute anyone that gets up in the morning and goes and does it. But I didn't get that response from a lot of people. No one was applauding me. And funnily enough, to this day, I can't ever recall anyone that's actually commended me on it and said, by the way, that was a great idea, well done. Never happened. It's quite sad.
That's Scottish culture, do you think, maybe? I think sometimes it's part of your culture, our heritage. Because I get it, Alex, I get it in my life as well. It can be, I think everybody gets it. It can be really close family, it can be really close friends, it can be, as you were saying, it can be folk just coming away with negative comments. At somebody's effort and hard work and trials and tribulations on it can contribute as a negative comment. For me, that's no good enough. And mindsets, we need to change. It took me a long while myself to change my own mindset. On everything used to be negative within my mindset, and through listening to a couple of different guys, one of them being that Dave Goggins and the other being Gary Vaynerchuk, you managed to, it was actually positive affirmations as well, if I'm honest with you. You can change your mindset, and then through that, as you say, you're cheering on folk as well. I see all the stuff that you're doing on YouTube and on Facebook, and other guys in their small companies, friends I know, and I'll share anybody's post who's trying to better themselves, do well with themselves. I'll go out my way to try and help them where I can. Anybody that's trying to better themselves, whether I know them or whether I don't. And I think I'd like to, it'd be good if we could try and share that with folk and try and let's change the narrative. Let's not be jealous of other folks' success. Let's be happy with their success. Their success is your success.
I'm saying it's really, really important to share positivity. It's, you know, we need to start applauding one another for doing well, and anyone that's took a tumble and they've got a knee down, pick them up, get them back on their feet and get them back on track and say, look, mate, you've had a bad day. It's not a bad life. It's just a day. Let's go on. You know, dust yourself down and implement that onto our children, and, you know, put that on our kids and make sure they know that that's how that they need to perform and how they need to be, and bring the best out in them. Bring the best out in the guy next to you. If someone's really struggling but they're really trying, give them a hand. Give them a punt up. it's not good enough to just be standing watching, waiting for people to flounder, and then kind of like commenting when they flounder and saying, that didn't work well for you, did it? Or you made an arse of that. You know, that's just, it's not me anyway. It's certainly not me. I love to see people succeeding. The hard workers, when it's deserved, when it comes off for them, that's just brilliant. That's music to my ears because I love it. And competition's healthy as well. The further I look and the more I look around the city and get to know people and meet other entrepreneurs, you just meet incredible people. You can't help but to be inspired by them. They're amazing, and they don't even know that they're inspiring you. They're just being themselves, but they're telling you about their story and all the hiccups along the way, and that they left themselves with no food in the fridge for a week and they couldn't pay their bills, but eventually they turned that corner and their investment started to work. And that's a story that I hear regularly, and it's very, very inspiring. It's very inspiring. You don't need business school. You don't need dozens of qualifications. You don't need it. You need heart, soul, drive, and hard work and determination. That's what you need to succeed. So that's how I take every day.
Sounds like you've took a lot of inspiration from going out and speaking to other business owners, hearing their stories and taking inspiration for their hardships that they've told you about, hearing and how they've overcome it. You've took some inspiration for that. Alex, I'd like, we'll try and a couple of questions left, mate, one or two things, and we'll round it up. I don't want to keep you all day. I know you've stuff to do. This one might be a wee bit hard. I'm not sure to think of. Can you, throughout your career so far, can you possibly think of one of the hardest business moments, things that's happened, and how you overcame it?
Yeah. What I would say was probably having a break-in at the fishery and having about, 12 to £15,000 worth of equipment and engines stolen overnight. Every outboard engine from all the boats, right at the peak of my season, where I've got clubs going out that day and the next day. And that was a very testing moment because no insurance on them. No one would touch the place for insurance because of its remote location. And that was when I was tested the most, because it was like, I think most people would have folded there and then walked away. So a mate of mine approached me and he went, "What do you need?" I says, "Well, I need engines." So we got together. I borrowed, robbed, stole, whatever you want. I stole loans from people close. I says, like, let's get money together. You're talking about a lot of money. You're talking about overnight. You're talking about first thing in the morning, trying to find, £7,000-8,000 to go and replace those engines immediately. I did. I managed it, and I got straight back on track. Then I got a bigger, longer van with a higher roof, put a racking system in the back, and those engines went home every night with me after that and sat in my driveway. And that would never happen again. But it did happen, and it was a very testing moment. You learn to be resilient when people are trying to damage you. And that was a very deliberate ploy to damage me and put me out of business. That wasn't an opportunist thief. That was someone else trying to damage the business and damage, the success of the place. But they failed miserably. The reason they failed is because they underestimated me first and foremost. And they underestimated how thick my head is, that I will just keep going no matter what you do. So nice try.
Lesson learned, Alex. I guess sometimes these things are sent to test you, and it's a lesson learned. The engines, no, you don't do it, but they would hang with you every night after that. So these things happen. These big, massive, maybe mistakes, blunders. Other people maybe put them on you, but they happen, and you can only but learn for them. So, final notes, Alex. Any advice for somebody starting a business? What advice would you give somebody starting a business?
I spoke about confidence. Be sure of yourself and absolutely believe in what you're doing. Work really hard at it. Put everything into it. Don't cut corners. Don't try and, you're not going to get days off. You're not going to get weekends off lying in your bed long lies when you've got a business. It's not going to happen. If you're not up for that, don't even put your foot in the pond. You'd be as well taking a normal job somewhere with normal hours, because the minute you're self-employed, the minute you're running, say for instance, you're in the food industry, out with your hours, you've got cash and carries, you've got suppliers to deal with, so your day doesn't finish at 3 o'clock, it finishes at 7. You've got books, you've got finances to sort, you've got produce to create, you've got menus to update. It's constant, it's never ending. You've got people that let you down. The chef doesn't turn up, so you need to know about the kitchen, you need to know how the oven works, you need to know where the kill switches are, where the water mains are. You need to know everything. You need to know all. So if you're going to start something, ask so many people, get as much advice as possible. And an offshoot of that is be careful who you ask for advice. There was an instance where I asked a well-known guy in the food industry prior to my first coffee shop project, did he think it was a good idea? And no, there's no money in it. You shouldn't do it up there. It will never make any money. And he'd done his damnedest to put me off. And I obviously realised why eventually, because he just didn't want any competition, didn't want me doing it. He knew I would do it right, he knew I would do it well. And he really tried his hardest to put me off, and I won't ever forget it. I don't hold it against him personally, but it wasn't particularly inspiring. And I would never give someone that advice. I just wouldn't do it. It's not, there's nothing positive about it. And it doesn't say much for your character if a younger entrepreneur's coming to you and you're putting the kibosh on them straight away and putting them off. It doesn't say much about you at all. It's almost a bit sinister, but that's just one of these things that you remember. I would always tell them just to give their absolute all to what they believe in, as long as they truly believe in what they're doing. And that will be apparent, because they won't cut corners, they won't be trying to botch things up or, tart up cheaper produce and deliver it as something else. That you can tell out there, you can go out there in the city and you know who's buying the best of coffees, the best of breads, the best of meats, the best of produces, the best of cutlery and condiments, and you just know who the good guys are. So someone getting out to start up, go and take a look at your industry and see what other people are doing, and you have to do something different, and you have to keep renewing yourself and refreshing yourself, and you've got to stay ahead of the game to stay relevant. It changes by the day.
So to summarise there, research, expect hard work, expect longer hours than what you're possibly going to expect, more different types of work to appear than what you're expecting just for your normal 9 to 5 day. There's all sorts at the back of that. There's also your looking after your finances, X, Y and Z to look after at the back of there. And also to innovate as well, try to be as innovative as you can. If you're thinking of starting something, try and come out with new angles. I think that's quite good earlier on when you were mentioning when you were being a landlord, you'd also help provide a service to get people into the flats. Now, I know that was maybe out of the goodness of your own heart. I don't know whether you charged them or not. It was just you want to provide a full service. But at the end of that, Alex, you got people in paying mortgages, which meant you got them in faster because you provided that service. They seen it as a good service, and it was a good service for you as well because your mortgage was getting paid 2 weeks earlier than what it could have been. Am I right in saying that as well there?
Trying to think outside the box and offer something that no one else was doing. It's always what I try and do. Way back at the beginning when guys that were averagely equipped for fly fishing on a large reservoir, that didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the watercraft, never knew what it was all about. I would give every single guy some of my time, get them on the right, get them on the right flies, get them on the right lines, get them in the right areas, because it is a big daunting place. And they always used to write back feedback and saying, I was really struggling, but the guy gave us help, he got us this, he got us on a fish, and it was always about that wee bit extra. And it goes a long way. People don't forget that. They come back because they feel comfortable. They come back because you've gave them a bit of freebie, a bit of free education. You've made their day so much better just by giving them your time. And when I'm sitting in somewhere for a coffee or a nice bit of lunch, and if the owners or those serving don't interact with me at all, it's highly unlikely that I go back there. I met a couple of young entrepreneurs about 2 years ago up in Denniston. I went into a place and I sat waiting to be served for quite a long time, and they completely ignored me because they were busy talking to their friends who were there. And it was a bad experience in a really, really highly respected place. And after I left, they realised, and they obviously realised who I was, and not that I deserved any extra, any special treatment, because I don't, I'm a customer, but they realised that I knew that game and that I was a real fan of coffee shops and I was well known in all the good ones. So they were kind of like, oh no, we need to get him back because he leaves a lot of stuff online and he's got quite a kind of lot of people online stuff. So they kind of invited me back. I says, look, it was just a really quite disappointing first visit. I've been really looking forward to coming. I've recommended you to a lot of people because I know, how good you are, and I've read all the reports and stuff. So because I left there, I went across the road to a place a lot less flamboyant, a lot lesser of an investment. And I watched a young team of entrepreneurs doing absolutely incredible things with food. I had incredible poached eggs and avocado and sourdough flatbreads and stuff like that. And I just had an amazing experience, beautiful coffee, and they were doing everything. I spoke to the boy, and he come and sat with me. We spoke for 25 minutes, and I was absolutely astonished at how much he'd spent on his investment. It was tiny. It was a shoestring budget because that's all they had. So they knew that they had to make that work for this amount of money, and they did. They scrimped, they scraped, they worked every hour under the sun, and before you know it, it took off. And it was a fantastic experience, and it was very, very inspiring to see these young guys that just knew what they wanted to do, and they did it with almost no money. So it doesn't always take fortunes and bank loans and debt to get an idea off the ground. I've proven that many times. Sometimes I've done things with almost nothing. Just because I've had money and I've made good money at times in my life doesn't mean you say I'm just prepared to willy-nilly throw away at things. So there's so much to be learned. I don't think you ever stop learning. I learn every time I speak to somebody. There's so many people out there in business that are way smarter than me, and they've got way more savvy with what they're doing. They're the people that I want to go and speak to. I want to have a coffee in their place and I want to listen to them because it's an education. It's a total education in Glasgow. There's so many good entrepreneurs. Really, you don't need to be looking at all the online guru stuff. It's out there for you. It's all out there and it's free information.
I've been looking into that recently as well, the amount of kind of business acumen, Glasgow, Scotland, the amount of business acumen and kind of ambitious people that will go, my eyes have been open to these, to this not too long ago there, maybe 6 years ago, coming from quite a small town, seen nothing of that world. I realised just how much ambition there is in Glasgow and surrounding areas, Scotland, and how much business acumen there is, as well as intellect. And how much we could be sharing, how much knowledge we're missing out on. How I think that maybe, could be wrong in saying this is just my opinion, I think that maybe middle class people and upwards, they tend to be quite good at sharing this knowledge with their kids. Certain positions, career paths you want to be involved in, how you go about starting businesses, they seem to share that a lot better. Certain levels of society seem to share that better than what let's call the working class. Then we don't share the stories, and there's work ethic there, but it's where you want to work. Do you want to be a grunter all your life who's hurting your body, or have you potentially to set them on that path? I don't think we share enough information, and there's certainly plenty out there. So that being said, Alex, I'm glad that you've come on and shared your account, mate. I've picked up a couple of things for listening to you. I'm sure there's millions more that we could hear out of your story, Alex, to be honest with you. Have you any advice, if you could think about young people in their careers, specifically, maybe not people who are thinking of starting a business, young people, if you could get back to yourself at 14, Alex, what advice would you give yourself in relation to a career path?
I can't even begin to fathom why at school they go to all the bother of asking you what you want to do and making your career choices. It's a total fallacy. It's nonsense. 14 or 13, 14, 15, you haven't got a clue. I don't believe that anything in school qualifies you for anything in life. I don't believe they're teaching the right syllabus. Times have changed. Why aren't they teaching about online businesses, about mortgages, about the stuff that you really need to know? Why aren't they teaching kids in school about how to not trust bankers and how to not trust this and how to read the small print? Because they are leaving school and they're getting themselves into massive financial pickles and debt. Teach them about avoiding credit cards. Teach them about finance vultures that are just waiting to prey on them with high interest loans against their first car and stuff like that. Teach them about the pitfalls of that, about walking onto a garage forecourt and signing the first 10 years of your working life away on a car that's only worth half of what you paid for it. Teach them about that. Educate them properly. The education syllabus I'm not a fan of at all, in any way, shape or form. I've got nothing good to say about education in this country. That will upset some people, but I've got my reasons for it. And I don't agree with it at all. I don't think we're teaching anyone anything of value by enforcing certain languages. You have to do this, religious education, art. Not everyone's an artist. Artists are born, they're not created. So there's a lot of bias in school. There's a lot of bias with the exams, the way it's structured and stuff. How should one person get a lesser chance in life because they're not mathematically gifted? I don't agree with it. It really, really irks me. It's detrimental, and it puts massive burden in young people's minds that could be vulnerable, volatile. They're already confused. They're teenagers. There's a lot going on. They're about to step into the working world, and instantly young guys, for instance, that haven't been good scholars, they're already get very little chance because they don't have anything to take to a potential employer. There's 5,000 school leavers all fighting for 20 jobs. It's almost criminal that we have sold off our industries and our constructions and our apprenticeships, and I just don't think young people have got much of a chance. They don't get the investment and they don't get the support. Why are we not investing in our youth? We aren't investing in them as a nation, and they're the future. Not everyone's going to be entrepreneurial. Not everyone's going to have that streak that they can go and create something. So there's so many fundamental problems in the country that we should be addressing, but we're not. There's almost a complete ignorance to that. And I just think that needs investment and it needs fixing. Our young people are our future. I would love to see places opening up to young people and getting them in probably before they leave school and showing them the reality of the industries that they might think they want into. 1 week's work experience is not enough. It's it's all a bit wrong, Adam, and it's all a bit out of date, and it's all a bit out of touch, and it needs addressed properly, at every level.
I think I agree. It's almost the root cause or the root problem. Most of us know that the school curriculum isn't up to date. Most of us can agree, any adult can agree in that, and that we're not tackling the problems within the curriculum that real life deals with, all the stuff you labelled there. I guess it's up to us, Alex, not me specifically, but it's up to everybody. It's up to us, as in, you don't expect the government or the curriculum to change. We need to but post these things online, try and share it. We're going to have to be the change that we want to see, I guess, by the looks of things, because the school curriculum has been the same for ages. We're no dealing with it. But it seems to be standard practice to all the stuff you were saying there. You come out of school, you get yourself into massive debt through not being well educated. A question I missed, I've not been well educated financially, and also to the pitfalls and the risks, the stuff we could easily set a better curriculum. I missed a question there, Alex. Have you any specific advice, or anybody you specifically talk to, or any things you could recommend in relation to looking after your finances through the years?
Yeah, I've made mistakes. I've overspent at times. What I will say is, probably people like myself, guys like me, from very, very modest backgrounds, sometimes in life when you get the really good paying jobs, you have to be very careful not to fall into the trap that you think that's going to last forever. Rainy day money, savings, being scrutinised and everything at times in my life. I was a reckless spender. When you're a single guy and you're home and you've got abundances of money and you're in the pub, you're overspending. So it doesn't last. It's very, very quickly spent. Sadly, the advice isn't there. They're not teaching that in schools, and it's easily, because when the money's coming in, everything's good. But it takes a very special kind of person to put that money away and save it and not touch it, and have the strength of character to not go near it until it's really needed, and just don't fall into the trap. If you're starting something up, you have to be prepared to scrimp and scrape. And it's true what they say, every single penny is a prisoner. You can have rainy days. One bad day's weather stops footfall into your premises. All of a sudden the wages haven't been paid that day and you've got 5 staff. You've got a problem. That's a day you need to make up. There's so many things that can happen, that can go wrong. There's so many pitfalls. And unless you're extremely shrewd with insurances and you are paying a massively protective premium, which I don't rate many of them. Haven't really ever found any type of business insurance that's worth what it says, They all find a way out of not paying out. I just think you've got to be really careful, and we're not educated to money. I certainly wasn't, so that's a very difficult subject. When the going's good,
do a full podcast on that, mate. You could do a full podcast on that. I'm just wondering if there's any specific things that you get in touch with accountants, or you close personal, kept good relationships with anybody who's an accountant, or did you manage your money yourself? Have you used specific companies?
Always managed myself, probably because early on I had some bad experiences with accountants and stuff. There are good accountants out there. There are good accountants in Glasgow, and depending on what you do, you'll pay a fee and you'll have your stuff handled for the year. And if you've got a good person, it's worth its weight in gold because the advice that comes with it. But I would always try and learn how to do it yourself as well. You have to know these things, and you have to know how to make it work. And every outgoing is a cost. Every outgoing is another piece of the pie that you have to work hard to account for. And you can't pay everybody in a small business. You can't have the luxury of paying this guy and that guy and the next guy. It's sometimes just not possible, Adam. And people do get caught up in stuff because, that's a whole other education how all, your returns and stuff, and how to balance the books and how to stretch it. Summer, winter, there's so many, a period of snow, streets being locked down, roadworks, so many things that stop footfall in a small business these days. We've got the dawn of Domino's and Starbucks and drive-thrus and all the strategic locations and where they're picked. Those sites aren't chosen by chance or because the land was cheap. Those sites are chosen by accountants, okay, and extremely intelligent planners that scrutinise land for sale and pick the locations because 5 different roads or motorways descend on that spot. So they stick a coster there, and they've already done the sums that 3.5 million people a quarter are going to drive through that, and out of that 800,000 are going to buy a coffee, so they know it works. We don't have that level of expertise, and we never will. These are corporations, they are conglomerates of hugely intelligent financial investors, hedge fund guys, all sorts, looking for a guaranteed return. We're just small scale entrepreneurs that find a way. So that's a whole other tangent.
It certainly is. You could certainly do a full podcast based on that itself, and maybe I'll be lucky enough to get somebody on the podcast to explain all that stuff to us at one point. Maybe get an accountant on, you never know, or somebody to that description.
Yeah.
Alex, I'll round it up, mate. Thanks very much for coming on. It's been really appreciated. I don't want to keep you any longer. We're nearly getting to the jaws of 2 hours there, and I know you'll have a million other things you'll be getting up to tonight, no doubt. Before we go, I'll give your YouTube channel a wee plug.
Yeah, my YouTube is the aim of it is to smash the taboo surrounding mental health. It's to get people talking. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It's not monetised. It's not anything like that. It's called AC, Coming Back to Life. And the name Coming Back to Life is one of my favourite Pink Floyd songs from the Division Bell album. You know them. And I chose that because it's about getting people back to life, getting them back to the best version of themselves through talking and through admittance that there's a problem. And that's the big step, it's to stop people getting down in the mire and taking that fatal final decision. And we know how depression can end. It's horrific. It's a massive rising problem. It's a pandemic all of its own. And the channel's just about that. AC, Coming Back to Life, and it's something that's very, very important to me. I believe everyone's entitled. So,
sorry for cutting you off there, mate. I really enjoy your channel. So I do your AC, Coming Back to Life. I admire how taking time out your own life to try and help others. It's a massive problem in our country, as we're all aware of. A lot of young guys taking their own life, a lot of mental health problems that's going on there. And you're taking time out of your own life, doing a wee thing, what you can, where you can, which I find quite admirable, mate. I think it's good. I take my hat off to you for doing that. At the same time, me watching it's given me a couple of ideas, and I'm sure there's a good couple of hundred people out there that's helping it for day to day. So well done, well done with me. Alex, really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, mate. No, you're a big guy, say that again. Thanks very much for coming on my Do It Now podcast. I think you're maybe the epitome of what this podcast is about. Hopefully, maybe another time, Alex, I can maybe get you back on. I found that I had William Crawford on the first Kit podcast, and the first one you do, you kind of touch on all these subjects, but see, after you've had time to digest the conversation, then you can get to the bones of exactly how you did the certain points, or how you got these jobs and different things, and really get to the bones of what the podcast's about. But maybe another time, if I'm lucky, mate, I could get you back on. And I wish you all the best with your future ventures, the cafe, the walks you're creating.
Brilliant.
Bond, mate, really do. I wish you all the best. You deserve it.
Always talking to you, Adam. You're a good guy, and I wish you every success with the podcast. And that is the fundamentals. If you're going to do it now. Definitely, I'm a total advocate of that. Get started immediately. Don't sit in an idea. Go for it.
Welcome to Do It Now, a platform for you to learn from those that have already done it. Do it now.